Bonjour class, today we're learning about how to tell time in French. It's a little bit different than in English, a lot of similarities but a few differences we want to look out for. First of all, we want to know how to ask what time it is, otherwise learning how to say what time it is isn't really useful if you don't know what question to be answering. So there's two ways to ask what time it is. The first one is by asking quelle heure est-il? This one is more common. It means what time is it? And here we see a classic example of inversion question asking. So it literally means what hour is it, but we would translate that to what time is it. The second way to ask what the time is by asking est-ce que vous avez l'heure? Here we see avez, which means avoir, or comes from avoir, which we remember means to have. So this question is going to translate as do you have the time? So those are two ways to ask what time it is. And now there are three steps to say what time it is, generally speaking, and then we'll get more specific. First of all, you always use the verb être. You put the hour using the French number, and then you put the word heure afterwards. No, it's always plural, except for if you're talking about it's 1 o'clock, because then it would be une heure without the S. So think of it like instead of saying it's 3 o'clock, you'd say il est 3 heures, it's 3 hours. And then you put the minutes after the hour. And this is going to change depending on whether you're talking about the right half of the clock, minutes 0 through 30, or the left half of the clock, talking about minutes 31 through 59. So let's start with how to talk about the minutes for 0 through 29. For that, you just add the minutes after the hour by saying the French number after the hour. For example, il est 3h05. We know il est means it is. 3 heures, 3 hours, and 5, of course, means 5, so this translates to, it's 3:05. Notice that you don't put 3h05, you just put 3h05. You don't put the word for and in the middle. Second example, you could say, il est 11h20, so we need to refresh our numbers a little bit, perhaps. 11, ça veut dire 11, et 20, ça veut dire 20. So if we put those two together, means it's 11:20. So if we're over here on the right half of the clock from minutes 0 through 29, we just add the minutes after the hour by putting the number afterwards. This is the easy part. So for the right half of the clock, we have it easy. Left half, a little bit different. From the half hour to the hour, so minutes 31 through 59, you subtract the number of minutes from the next hour by using the word moins, which we learned means less, and then the French number. So for example, we'll talk about some examples in French, but just really quick. In French, they wouldn't say that it is 10:40. They'd say it's 11 minus 20. So it's going to be a little bit different way of thinking about telling time than we may be used to. So our first example, il est 4 heures moins 10. This moins changes everything. It means less, so we know it's going to be 4 hours less or minus 10, which would mean it's 3:50. Take a look at another example. You could also say il est 10 heures moins 20, which would mean 10 hours minus 20, which means it's 9:40. So if you're over here on the left side of the clock, you're working backwards from the top. So always think about you're telling time from the 12, from the top of the clock. So if you're on the right half, you're telling time from the 12 by adding on to whatever it is on the hour. From the left hand, you're also telling time from the 12 by subtracting whatever it is to the next hour. So you're always working your way up here to the top of the hour, whether you're adding or subtracting. There's a few more special terms if you're talking about the half or the quarter hour. So if you're talking about the quarter hour, so like it's 3:15 or 3:45, anything in the quarter, you use écart, which means and a quarter. So for example, if you said il est 1h15, this with the quart, it breaks our rule about using and, it's okay here. So if you say il est 1h15, that would mean it's 1:15. Another example, if you say il est 1h moins le quart, that would mean it's 12:45. So here we see it's 1 hour écart and a quarter. Here it's 1 hour minus a quarter, so 12:45, working backwards. If you're talking about the half hour, you would use et demi. So for example, saying il est 7h30, that would mean it's 7:30. And of course, this one is the same whether you're going forwards or backwards, so we don't have to worry about using moins in this case. If you want to use this telling time to describe when something specifically happened, you're going to use the preposition à, which in English means either at, to, or in, which in telling time it makes the most sense to put it next to at. So for example, you could say l'école commence à 9h moins 20. So we know l'école, ça veut dire school. Commence, that comes from our regular ER verb, commencer, which means to start. Now we have à, which we know means at. 9h moins 20. We have the moins, which means less, so we know it's 9 hours minus 20. So altogether, oh, see, that's a mistake. School begins at 8, and then this should be 40, not 50. School begins at 8:40. Few more expressions for telling time. These are important for specific times of the day, or specific ones like noon or midnight, or if you want to talk about whether something is early or late. So our first one we already talked about. This is how to ask the time. So if you say à quelle heure, it's not asking what time it is, it's asking what time something is happening. So you might say à quelle heure est-ce que nous déjeunons? What time do we have lunch? If you want to talk about the afternoon, you'd say de l'après-midi. If you want to say in the morning, it would be du matin. In the evening, du soir. Early, en avance. You can think about it, this looks like the English word advance. Late, en retard. Noon is midi, think of it like midday. Midnight is minuit. On the dot, pile. Almost, presque. Late, tard. Early, tôt. And about is vers. So take notes on these as well and be prepared to use these in class. Et ça c'est fin. Let me know what questions you have and keep practicing telling time.